On today's show, why are the LA Clippers so bad at drafting? Just how bad has it gotten, and how can we get better at it? Going to be joined by a special Clipper fan guest to talk about it all on today's Locked On Offseason Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and entering my 20th season as a Clipper fan this fall. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA Sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Let me know what you think of this episode, why we are so bad at drafting, and which blunder was the worst in your opinion. Let me know in the comments. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download the app. And joining me today, a rare instance where I have 2 episodes in a row with a guest. Tonight, we have, in my opinion, one of the rising stars of Clipper media, but he's also kind of like me where he doesn't hide that he's a fan of the team.
Oh, yeah.
And I came into contact with him recently when he was commenting on my tweets, but he's actually going to be covering the Clippers for real this year for the Sporting Tribune, which is Arash Markazi, who used to be Sports Illustrated and LA Times, his website. Grant, you're a longtime Clipper fan, and I know you listen to the show, but welcome, man. It's good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's kind of surreal being on Locked On. I mean, I've been listening for years, and I've been listening to your show for a while, so it's pretty surreal, but thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk some Clippers basketball because there's a lot to get to.
Yeah, both of us recently made appearances with Adam on his Clips Talk. If you guys didn't listen to the episode yesterday with Adam Osland, our radio host, check that out. And also Grant and I each had our own episodes with him, so check that out on his channel. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about drafts. And Grant, before we get started, just really quickly let the listeners know, like, how long you've really been a Clipper fan. You know, what was that first year? And because you've been through it.
Yeah, so I've been a Clipper fan since '09. Like literally when Blake Griffin got drafted by the Clippers, that's when I started to become a Clipper fan. I was watching him at Oklahoma and he went to the Clippers, and I didn't really have a team at the time because at that time I was, pretty young, so I didn't really follow basketball as closely as I do now. And when Blake Griffin got to the Clippers and they had Baron Davis and Eric Gordon and they were throwing lobs and he was doing the spin move over Danilo Gallinari dunks against the Knicks, I was like, this has to be my team. This is too entertaining for me not to follow it. And look, this is a time where the Lakers are winning back-to-back championships, so I kind of took the alternative route and the alternative team. Obviously, I didn't know what I was getting into with the Donald Sterling and the history of the Clippers, and I eventually learned that early on with some of the playoff success or lack thereof, I should say. But man, since then it's been a whirlwind. It's been a lot of failures in the playoffs. It's been a lot of highs, a lot of peaks, a lot of valleys as well. But yeah, I will never give up this team. It's something crazy because a lot of fans probably would have left the fandom of the Clippers after the first 3 years, just seeing what they did between 2012 and like 2015. But I stuck through it, and I am never giving the Clippers up, and I'm so happy that I am because I met so many great people through the Clipper community, such as yourself, and like you mentioned, Adam and Jamal Christopher, and of course, Arash has me on coverage now. So it's been 15 years of me being a fan, or actually, 14 years of me being a fan. But I'm pretty excited for the future. A lot of people aren't. Like, I'm having to defend the Clippers a lot on social media, but I am. I'm in it. I'm in it right now. I mean, being a Clipper fan is not for the weak. It's not for the faint of heart. But here we both are rooting for the Clippers.
Yep. So rooting for the Clippers, one of the things that's been rough about us is we have a bad history of drafting, and there's been a lot of talk about this, but I've never actually made a proper episode on it. So I figured, having another Clipper fan on to talk about it and reflect on some of these would be good. So before we actually talk about, how we can get better at this or let's just talk about the extent of the the problems. I'm not going to go too far back. We're really just going to do the Staples Center era because obviously scouting and all that, there's been so many people in the building throughout those different years, but we're just going to do the Staples Center era. But before I get to the Staples Center era, I just wanted to ask you a question. The Clippers have drafted number 1 overall 3 times. Do you think you can name the 3 players?
I know one of them just because he's alumni of the school that I went to, University of the Pacific, and that's Michael Olowokandi.
Okay, there we go. Candyman. All right.
Yeah, the Candyman. But I'm not going to lie and say that I know the other ones because obviously I've only been a fan since 09, and I probably should be more of a Clippers historian than I probably am, but I only know probably from like 05, 06 on because that's, kind of when the heydays were in 06 and then when I became a fan. So, yeah.
Okay, but there's another obvious one that you've already mentioned in this show.
Oh, why am I Blake Griffin, dude? What am I talking about?
So the only other one is Danny Manning. So Danny Manning being one of the better Clippers of all time, I guess we did well there.
Ones, yeah.
Right. And then Blake Griffin obviously is Blake Griffin. So we only really fumbled the number 1 overall draft pick with Michael Olowokandi. For those that don't know, Michael Olowokandi was picked 1st overall in the 1998 draft. We could have drafted Dirk Nowitzki. We could have drafted Vince Carter. We could have drafted Paul Pierce. That could have been an interesting story, staying at home. But here's the thing about that. I still don't fully trust Donald Sterling to manage those superstars long-term anyway. So, the Candyman, I think that's just a part of our history. As far as some of the more recent years, I think it's much harder to criticize the draft picks when your team is good and you're drafting late in the 1st round, for example. But I think what has really pissed Clipper fans off is that we seem to never really get anything. We get a lot of guys that just kind of are on the end of the bench. They never really get a chance. And when they do get their chance, they just don't show enough to warrant more playing time. And I'm just going to name some names right now. CJ Wilcox, for example. We picked him 28th overall in the 1st round of the 2014 draft. And why are we drafting so late? Because we were a very good team. But it's funny. We could have hindsight 2020 on this one. We could have drafted Jokic, but
a lot of teams missed on that one.
Yeah, exactly. But the person I wanted us to draft, and this is because I do enjoy college basketball, but with how much I watch the NBA, I just don't get enough time. And that was even the case when I was in high school, which was what we're talking about right now when both of us were in high school. Mm-hmm. But I wanted us to draft Kyle Anderson because I saw Kyle Anderson. And we are now 10 years in, Kyle Anderson's still in the league. And he just got a decent payday from the Warriors. So that could have been good. Joe Harris was drafted a couple picks after. He could have honestly maybe ended up being something. Spencer Dinwiddie.
Just retired.
Right. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's still in the league. Jeremy Grant, Jordan Clarkson. So there were some guys out there that we missed on, and that's just CJ Wilcox. There was also, and honestly, I don't really blame us for this one, Bryce Johnson from North Carolina. While his game didn't quite translate to the NBA, he was so good at North Carolina. So, that happens. I don't really hold it against us for that one, but there's one in particular in recent years that really has hurt us. Yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that and the long-term implications that it's had?
Are you talking about the 13th pick of the 2018 draft?
I am.
Now, that was a draft where, you're coming off a season where it's kind of like a retool year. It's not really a rebuild year. And you have these 2 excellent draft picks. And they didn't initially draft Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They actually drafted, Miles Bridges. And then they obviously traded that pick to get SGA. And obviously the front office had their eyes on SGA. But when you have those 2 picks, and I remember around the time, and this as well, the talk was, well, look, Michael Porter Jr. is kind of slid to that 13 through 15 range. Why don't the Clippers just they have 2 back-to-back picks. You already got one of the guys that you wanted. Why not just take Michael Porter Jr.? And, obviously he had the back issues and there's a lot of concern about that. And now we see how good Michael Porter Jr. is in the right system and with the right coach and how lethal he can be and how good he still can be, in my opinion. So that was a huge miss. Now, look, at the time I was like, okay, hey, Jerome Robinson, not bad. He's a guard. He can maybe shoot a little bit. He has a little bit of upside, coming out of, what was it, Boston College? Yeah, Boston College. And I was kind of a little bit hyped about him, but he just never panned out. And it's kind of crazy because he was actually on a roster last year. Wasn't he on the Warriors last year? I know he didn't get a lot of playing time, but it was just kind of crazy that those back-to-back picks, and obviously, look, hindsight's 2020, but the rhetoric around the time was like, okay, the Clippers did get a really good guard in SGA, but they also kind of missed on MPJ. Even at the time, a lot of people were saying that. And now, obviously, so many years in advance, it's obviously the obvious pick that we should have went with Michael Porter Jr. But even at the time, everyone's like, oh man, that could come back to bite the Clippers, and it actually did. Now, here's the other thing that I want to ask you, and I know this is your show, but I just wanted to ask you, do you think, even if we drafted MPJ, do you think that MPJ would have gone in the Paul George deal, or do you think that he would have stayed? Like, what do you think he would have went over? Because I never even thought of this until we're talking about it now. Do you think he would have went instead of Shea, or do you think it still would have been Shea only and then a bunch of picks? Like, I don't.
Instead of Shea is interesting. I think it would have.
Yeah.
Well, MPJ wouldn't have played that first year, right?
True. This is true.
So I don't think they would have taken a risk on that. Honestly,
That's true.
I think they would have gone with SGA. As far as the Jerome Robinson one is tough because, and the MPJ one that really could have potentially made a difference. I'm actually looking at the beginning of the 2000s, and we actually did make some good picks. I'm not gonna lie. 2000, Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson.
Yes.
That ushered in a good amount of fans right there. 2001, we drafted Tyson Chandler second overall and traded him for Elton Brand, who ended up being one of the best Clippers of all time.
Right.
And then 2002, that was a rough one. We drafted Chris Wilcox, and we could have drafted the two picks right after him, Amari Stoudemire and Caron Butler, who ended up being pretty good.
Oh, my goodness.
And then 2003, Chris Kaman. I actually think that aged well. I'm okay with that one.
Not bad.
He became an all-star. He was our starting center on one of our best teams ever. 04, Sean Livingston. I mean, to me, Sean Livingston would have been great. I mean,
Sure.
he had so much potential. That injury just ruined everything. And then there's the Al Thornton, who I thought was going to be our franchise player at one point. Eric Gordon, I actually think was a good pick.
Yeah, not bad.
He averaged 20-plus points. Here's one that hurts, though. 2005 draft, Yaroslav Korolev, 12th overall. And these are some of the players that were picked after him. Danny Granger, Nate Robinson, Jarrett Jack, David Lee, Brandon Bass, Monte Ellis. Lou Williams was picked 45th. That's crazy because he came out of high school. But he came out of high school, but he was picked 45th is crazy. Even Marcin Gortat was 57th in that draft, and he ended up being a very solid pro, future Clipper. Yeah. But it's a rough one. As far as I'm going to read some of the more recent ones as well. Terrence Mann, obviously, we struck gold with that one in the second round. It's crazy. In 2021, we drafted Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, like he is actually a really solid rotational player. And maybe you mentioned this, but we got DeAndre Jordan in the second round in 08. Like that was probably that's actually a really good pick because he was like a part of the franchise cornerstones for years in the Lob City days. So I mean, we hit on that one. But again, like 1-8 in 2010, like Al-Farouq Aminu, and I know he was like a decent player and he had a decent career, but like still, when you're picking at 8, I don't even know who was in that 2010 draft. But again, like some of these I'm going down the list and it's like, okay, yeah, you hit on DeAndre Jordan, but if I'm looking at some of these second round picks, and look, second round picks are never going to pan out. Like I think a lot of people get this idea that, oh, you can find a steal in the second round every year. Maybe not every year, like Jokic is an exception. There's some other guys that are an exception, but like for us to bash second round picks, it's not really fair, I feel like. But yeah, some of these first rounders, I mean, I'm just scratching my head. Like you mentioned Al Thornton and even Reggie Bullock, like I guess I get what they were trying to do, but again, it sucks to see who they could have gotten.
Right. Now coming up, going to be looking at how really bad is the problem? How can we fix it? And what is the actually, I don't know about the near future. What does the future of the team look like? Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. Well, we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Damn, that's actually really cool. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, back here with Grant Mona of the Sporting Tribune and a Clipper fan as well. We're talking Clippers drafts, and we talked about some of the fumbled picks. So clearly, it's been a problem, right? Now, let me ask you this. What do you think about some of the young players in the last couple of years? I don't want to say Terrence and Amir, they're kind of past that at this point. I think we both can agree that we've done pretty well with those two.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I was gonna say, because that's another second round pick that we hit on with Terrence Mann. Like, obviously he's part of the core of the team, I guess you could say. He was one of the main reasons the Clippers got to their first Western Conference Finals, so that pick already paid dividends. So obviously, look, it's a second round pick. You didn't really expect much, but he's turned into a really solid player that I feel like even if he was on other teams, he would still develop into a really solid connector piece. So that one is like really, really good. But outside of that, I mean, Moussa Diabate, he's now on the Charlotte Hornets. He never really panned out. Never really had a runway to kind of get any playing time, because the Clippers always had veteran backups as their centers, with Mason Plumlee and obviously Daniel Tice in recent years. So he never really had a runway to play. I always thought that he's a high motor guy. He could have maybe turned into something, but he had a few injuries and there's just never really something there. And obviously, I think the big one in the past couple years was Jordan Miller, right? We saw what he could do in Summer League. We saw how good he can be. He took that extra leap in Summer League that we probably didn't even see coming. Now, I loved his game coming out of Miami, but I never thought he could turn into a player that could average 20 points per game in a Summer League, right? So I'm curious to see how they use him this year, but I feel like he has a ton of upside. A guy that, and I'm not comparing the two, and I've said this on my lives as well, he moves a little bit like SGA with his shiftiness, with his balance, with the way he moves around the paint. Now, obviously, SGA is way, way better than him, but I'm just saying in terms of movement, that's kind of what he reminds me of. So you have that, and that was a second-round pick as well. That was the same 48th pick that the Clippers drafted Terrence Mann at, so maybe they just love the 48th pick. And then the first rounder, Kobe Brown, at the end of the first round in 2023. It remains to be seen about him. I like his intangibles. I like kind of what he can bring at the power forward spot. He's physical. He can handle the ball a little bit well. He's got to get a little bit better with his decision making. But I mean, if he takes a little bit, maybe 2 more steps, that could be a hit. It could be. It's just that, is he really going to get playing time? And that's kind of what I want to ask you. Like, do you see any of our recent picks getting like legitimate playing time anytime soon? Because this team has been veteran laden for so many years, right? And it's always been about, hey, how many guys can we bring in from the free agency or from the trade market? So there's never really a runway for these guys to actually show what they can do. So I would love to see these guys contribute in the next few years, but I just don't know, just based off what the front office has done.
Yeah, I think this season, and I've talked about it a lot, is a chance for Jordan Miller, in my opinion, in training camp or in practice to prove maybe he can get Amir Coffey's minutes. I think just being a wing, lefty, attack closeouts, can maybe make some open threes. That kind of puts him in a similar situation to Amir in terms of what his role would be with our current team. So I think it's going to come down to that. Honestly, when I'm looking at these picks, one of my biggest takeaways is that the Clippers' bad drafting is a little bit overblown now that I'm looking at it. Because like in the last 10 years, here's who I think are like bad picks. CJ Wilcox, okay, you can say that was bad. You can say Bryce Johnson was bad because Siakam, DeJounte Murray, and several good players were after him, but he was a very solid player in college. And I know that doesn't always mean it's going to translate to the league, but I can't get too mad for that not panning out because he was playing on a high level. Like it wasn't a crazy pick at the time. That's a very hindsight one. I remember CJ Wilcox. Now, I wasn't quite familiar with his game, but I know that Kyle Anderson was in the same conference as him and was a better player. But obviously, it's all about what they're seeing in terms of translatable skills. But anyways, Kyle Anderson ended up being better long term. Besides that, yeah, Jerome Robinson would be the third one. And then I guess you could say Musa because we don't have him. But as you said, second round picks, like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? And then Kobe Brown remains to be seen. So really, like 3 or 4 in the last 10 years, it's not really been as bad as people think. Now, let me ask you this. I want to ask you about Brandon Boston, because that kind of sucked. That came to an end. We really didn't get to fully let him go. And what do you think about the future of this team with this, in the sense that we don't have draft picks and you don't trust our drafting? Like, what can we do to get better at this?
Yeah, I think so. To add on to the Brandon Boston thing, obviously there was so much talent coming out of college for him, but he had that injury, and it was that the COVID year. I'm not sure if it was, but he had the hand injury, I believe, and that kind of ruined his year in college. And Jamal Christopher, our good friend, he's the one that said, like, I hate when guys just come out of college and they kind of ruin their chances at being a good NBA player because they don't go back. And I feel like that's what happened with Brandon Boston. Now, he's a guy that can absolutely put the ball in the bucket, but is, like I mentioned about a few other guys, his decision making isn't the greatest, and his frame wasn't really built to be the position that he wants to play, right? So, and again, he never really had a runway behind two wings and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, right? Kind of the position that he wanted to play. So he can absolutely put the ball in the basket, but I feel like he was a one-dimensional player, right? And at his size, I feel like he can be a lot more. That's why I love that somebody took a chance on him. And he's kind of out of this situation now. I never wanted him to be away from the Clippers, but I feel like for his career, it's kind of best for him, right, to go to a different scenario where he's going to get maybe some runs. So it's unfortunate that's how it turned out. I think a lot of Clipper fans are really hyped about it. But it just is what it is. That's what comes with some of these guys. And then in terms of the future, like I'm going to ask you the same question because I don't really know. Like you mentioned, not many draft picks in the next 5-6 years. If you're going to get draft picks back, it's going to be because you traded Kawhi or you traded James Harden or you put together a package for somebody and you get something back. Obviously, we'd have loved to get something back in the Warriors trade for Paul George, but they probably would have thrown in a couple picks, but that never panned out. So it's probably just going to be the same thing. Wait until 2026 when you have cap space, you don't have any draft picks, and try to get guys through free agency or maybe through trades as veterans. So listen, it worked out, I guess, in 2019, waiting for those veteran slots to open up because they got two top 10 players at the time in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But I just don't think the Clippers are built right now to be a team that's like, oh, we have all these young assets. Oh, we have all these picks. That's just not their style. And I feel like we just have to deal with it.
Yeah, the Brandon Boston thing is like, with guys like Kawhi, Paul, James Harden, you want somebody that is more comfortable off the catch, off ball, playing a role player role. And Brandon kind of just seemed like that guy that wants to be a 6-man bucket getter off the bench. And that's the way he's going to develop because he just wasn't quite good enough at those, role player skills that we use Amir Coffey for and Terrence Mann, knocking down the open three and stuff like that. Right. But yeah, I do agree with the draft picks thing. The thing is, remember, if we keep our pick this year, if we do better than Houston, but Houston finishes not in the bottom 10, then we keep it. So then there'll be a chance to draft a first rounder, and then our front office and our scouting gets put to the test again. But look, man, at the end of the day, our scouting department has to be looked at. I'm not going to call out names because I don't know them, but the results are the results. And there's got to be some questioning there, I think. But coming up, going to finish it off with some rapid fire Clipper fan stuff about the Intuit Dome. Grant was recently there, as was I. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, so to finish this episode off, Grant, you had a great video, a banger, 120K guy on YouTube.
Crazy.
Got you halfway to 1,000 subs. By the way, go sub to his YouTube channel. But give me the one thing you're most looking forward to about the Intuit Dome.
It's our home. it's the Clippers home arena. No more matinee games, all night games. It's crazy looking at the schedule and seeing all that stuff, but you don't have to share. You don't have to worry about the team store being flipped around, or you don't have to worry. The Clippers have their own shop now. It's crazy. Just being able to have your own home base, separating from the Lakers and the Kings and the Sparks, and I think that's the biggest thing it's already paying dividends with the schedule, but I feel like as we get into the season, we're going to see it like Sunday night games, Saturday night games. It's going to be crazy to see that. Obviously, look, we all know about the technology and the Halo board and how cool it looks aesthetically and the zoom through and all the digital stuff. But I just feel like it's already paying dividends for the team, right? You're going to get more rest on the weekends. Obviously, the back-to-backs hurt, and the NBA is just never doing us any favors there. But I just feel like having your own home and a place to call home, and you can recruit players now and say, look at this luxury modern arena that you can come play at, where you're going to have the trading facility right there. You're going to have a luxury locker room. That's also going to pay dividends. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's not really all the tech, and obviously that's great, but it's really calling a place your home and separating from the purple and gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me ask you some rapid fire ones real quick.
Sure.
Favorite Clipper all time?
Oh, Blake Griffin, duh. He
Okay.
got me into the fan base, yeah.
All right. Favorite Clipper right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm gonna say this is crazy. I'm gonna say Terrence Mann.
Wow,
I'm
you're
gonna say
just like
Terrence
me.
Mann.
Just like me.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite Clipper game ever? I think I know where you're going with this one.
Oh, Game 6, Utah, 2021. I was at that game, way up in the top.
There we go. Game you're most looking forward to this season?
The Paul George return. I want to
same.
see how the Clipper fans do it, and I want to see how many boos he can get.
Same. You literally entered the same as I would answer all of them. And then my last one would be actually the lowest Clipper moment.
Lowest Clipper moment? Shoot. It would be the bubble, but it's probably 2015 when they blew the 3-1 lead to Houston. That was brutal for me.
Yeah, that's definitely the top two. And then my last one is best Clipper shot, singular shot.
Wow, that's a good one. I mean, I would say like free throws if it's Chris Paul in that game 7 against San Antonio.
That wasn't a free throw, though. That was a floater with a second left.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. I would also say, I mean, I would say like so many baskets down the stretch in 21. That's a good question. I've never been asked that question, so maybe those two.
For me, it's
maybe Blake Griffin's like and one in Game 7 in 2014.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Mine would be Chris Paul's game winner because it's like literally one of the only game winners in Game 7 history in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I was there for it. So that was amazing. But Grant, great time on the show as always. Definitely we'll have you on more throughout the season. Let everybody know where they can find you on socials, but also the content you're going to be making for the Clippers, covering them this upcoming season.
Yeah, so I'm going to be covering the Clippers for the Sporting Tribune. We're going to have articles and content there. As you can see, you can find me at gmona48 on X, but you can find me at my YouTube page, Money Mo Media. I'm going to be posting a lot of stuff there. That's where you can find my Into a Dome tour. So a lot of content coming from both of us. So you guys got to stay tuned.
Yes, sir. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more. And of course, let us know what you think of the draft conversation, which, bad pick pissed you off the most. And yeah, just let us know your thoughts on the episode. Make sure you follow Money over here. And the age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.